Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, Preparing for a Virtual Matchmaker. My name is Pamela and I will be the web organizer for today. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment and go over a few housekeeping items. We want to make sure today's presentation is extremely valuable for you, so we ask that you submit all questions by clicking on the question button in the control panel and typing your question. This webinar is in preparation for our virtual matchmaker, which is next week. The matchmaker is a great opportunity to network and pitch your capabilities to prospective government buyers. A virtual matchmaker means you can now do this from the comfort of your home. Our speakers today are Joseph Scott and Larry Brown. Joseph is the director of Youngstown State University's Procurement Technical Assistance Center, PTAC, which is hosted by the Williamson College of Business Administration. Larry is a procurement counselor with the Ohio University Procurement Technical Assistance Center in Cincinnati, Ohio. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Joseph and Larry to our presentation this morning.
Thank you, Pamela. Before we begin, I'd like to extend a thank you to yourself, Pamela, Allison, Ann Siegel, and the rest of the Matchmaker team here that put all this together and invited myself and Larry and one of our colleagues, Rich Delicio, who will be speaking later this week. Thank you for inviting us to do these webinars. And just a little tidbit before we dive into presentation too much is PTACs. We are funded in part by Defense Logistics Agency, which is our federal entity. We are funded also in part by the Ohio Department of Development Services Agency, as well as our host organizations, Ohio University for Larry and Youngstown State University for myself. So diving into this presentation, we were invited to speak on how to prepare for a matchmaker. But this year, it's going to be a virtual matchmaker. So we want to cover what do's and don'ts apply to a virtual matchmaker, as well as what continues to extend to a matchmaker in general. So we'll go over some virtual etiquette, some meeting tips for the actual meeting itself, how to prepare your elevator speech, and how to get that information and get the most out of your meetings. So first thing I want to talk about is virtual etiquette. Working remotely has by now become rather familiar to everyone. And some people may be working in the office now. Myself and I believe Larry as well, for the most part, we're still working remotely. So, we're trying to adjust. Everyone's had to adjust, working remotely. If you are able to work from the office, all this still carries through as well. First tip here is be aware of your surroundings. I have a picture here on the right that hopefully gives a little bit of humor to your early morning, but it's a local news anchor in the Northeast Ohio area who, on a live broadcast was interrupted by his cat. And, that's one of the perks of working from home is, you have all the home distractions going on. But I bring this up because there's going to be a theme throughout this presentation of professionalism. And being aware of your surroundings, that's going to be key to presenting yourself professionally, because with a matchmaker, this may be your first time meeting these people, and first impressions do go a long way. So just being aware of your surroundings, maybe you need to use a little backdrop to change your surroundings a little bit, but whatever you need to do, just be cognizant of that. You do also want to dress professionally, not just the top, but the rest of you as well. Because, if you were going into the in-person matchmaker like we had last year at the Cleveland Browns Stadium, you want to be dressed in a suit, the tie, the whole 9 yards. You don't want to walk in a hoodie and sweatpants because, again, first impressions go a long way. If you present yourself professionally, they're going to receive you a lot better. And working virtually and having a lot of virtual meetings, the camera, you can only see the top half normally. But last thing you want to happen is, because I have some back problems. If my back starts acting up and I stand up, I don't want people to see that I'm wearing sweatpants or shorts in the webcam. So if something happens, you do want to be, presenting yourself professionally, even if they can't see parts of you. You do want to try to test your internet connection and have a solid internet connection wherever possible. This can be tough in a day and age where everyone is working remotely. I know I struggle with internet issues every now and then as well. But if you can try to test your internet connection, maybe relocate to a place that has stronger internet, do what you can to make that happen. Because again, the last thing you want to happen is a good conversation gets cut short because the internet breaks up. On that same line of thinking with being professional and being aware of your surroundings, you might want to dedicate a space for that meeting. Again, whether you're in the office or you're at home, dedicating a space that removes distractions, removes interruptions, and helps you present yourself professionally, that's going to be key. One of the last things I want to leave you with on virtual etiquette is be patient. Technology, we all struggle with technology every day, and I think we're all trying to get a lot better with it as days go by, but there may be some internet issues, there may be some user issues. That's fine. We're all learning. So people you're meeting with on your meetings, they're learning as well. So just remember, try to be patient, and they'll try to be patient with you as well. So what don't you want to do meeting virtually? Well, I know for myself, there's a tendency to want to take notes on my computer because it's right here. I can pull up the window and start taking notes. But in a Matchmaker meeting, you wouldn't do that in person. You wouldn't have your head down writing notes. You'd be sitting there, looking them in the eyes, having that conversation. The other reason you don't want to type notes on your keyboard is it makes noise. And the last thing you want is for a distraction, your voice to be overcome by the typing of your keyboard, or their voice, and you can't hear what they're saying and have to ask them to repeat themselves. You also don't want to be distracted. So along those same lines of, you want to devote your full attention to that meeting. I know, again, working at home, working in the office, there's lots of distractions everywhere. If you're home, maybe the kids are running around, they need a little bit of oversight. If you can, maybe, significant other, friend, someone can try to watch them, or, you just tell them, hey, look, I have an important meeting at this time, please leave me alone. Or, just sitting there in the, in front of your computer. It's easy to your eyes to start wandering, or you start thinking about the rest of what you need to do in the day. Well, that'll come across a little bit. So you want to devote your full attention to who you're meeting with and to that conversation. Also, you don't want to turn your volume up on your computer too loud. If it's hard to hear, maybe turn it up just a couple notches, or ask them to speak a little louder. You don't want to have it full blast, because that will create feedback and that'll just ruin the conversation. Along those same lines, you don't want to shout like you're on speakerphone. I do a lot of calls on speakerphone, and sometimes I'm walking away from the phone to do something else, and I need to speak a little louder, or I do have it right next to me and I'm still shouting. Well, you don't want to do that, because you don't want to come across as aggressive or shouting. If you are struggling to be heard, if they're saying that they can't hear you, you can try to move closer to the microphone. Or if that doesn't work, maybe it's better to call in on your phone instead of using a built-in microphone. And additionally, you don't want to interrupt. I know we've all been on calls where connection's a little rough and someone's talking and it's hard for them to come through, but you already know what they're going to say, and you want to skip ahead to that. Well, in this case, again, first impression, you don't want to interrupt people. Accidents are going to happen, especially with internet, but you want to try to give them the courtesy of finishing their thoughts and then respond accordingly. So those are some tips for meeting virtually, as this is the first virtual matchmaker. And one of the key things is to be professional, but also be patient. Now, in general terms of, how to prepare for a matchmaker before you get to the matchmaker. Well, as this is the first virtual matchmaker, like I said before, you do want to test your internet connection. If you can identify a strong internet, good. If you're identifying there's weaknesses or issues, you want to try to address those long before you get to the meeting. But beyond that, what else? You want to prepare a physical space, adjust lighting, remove clutter, and position the camera so that it, is pointed towards you appropriately. Again, all this is to make a good first impression and to look professional. Something else, you want to plan out your meetings. When we're in person, you had your list, of meetings throughout the day, and you're walking around the area, you can see all the tables. Well, now it's virtual. I know there's a great agenda plan for the matchmaker, but it's easy to get lost in the virtual workspace, or something else comes up, distracts you. You want to plan out your meetings, know when you're meeting and who you're meeting with at each time. Sometimes, what I'll do for a day is I'll write out my meetings, put it on a sticky note right next to my computer. And that way I can always see it, and it reminds me, okay, 10 o'clock, I'm meeting with this person, and they work for Department of Army. Have a contingency plan too. Obviously we want everything to go smoothly, but some things do happen. So if your microphone breaks the day of, do you have your phone ready to call into the meeting and talk that way? Or, do you need to use the chat feature to communicate? So, having a contingency plan within reason on addressing some last minute issues. You also want to practice your elevator pitch. And Larry's going to speak on this a bit more in a few minutes and really dive into how can you, really be effective with that pitch. You also want to customize a capability statement for everyone that you're meeting with. Like I said, our colleague, Rich Delisio, he's presenting on this later in the week. But a little hint that I'll leave you with here is customize it. If you're meeting with 5 different agencies, have 5 different capability statements, one to address each agency. And finally, and this is a big one, research who you're meeting with. The last thing you want to do is walk in the meeting and have no clue who you're meeting with. If you're meeting with Department of Army, you want to research, what's their mission when it comes to procurement? What's their, how many offices do they have in this area? What have they been purchasing in the past? What have their needs been? And what are they anticipating their needs will be in the future through the publication of procurement forecasts? All federal agencies, put out these forecasts. All this purchase history is public knowledge. So you can do a little bit of research. Some websites that you can use, usaspending.gov. Beta.sam.gov is trying to roll everything into one unit as well. And, looking at the agency websites during the meeting. So once you've entered the room, so to speak, because now it's virtual, we will have virtual rooms. What do you want to do? Well, first thing, you want to join the meeting on time. And that's where, having that checklist or that, calendar of when your meetings are, and you want to make sure you're joining the right meeting as well. That's key. So join the meeting on time. The first thing you're going to do, it's natural, exchange introductions. At that point, this is where it'll vary a little bit. When we were in person, the next thing might have been to hand out a business card or hand over your capability statement. But now it's virtual. That's a lot tougher. So I'd recommend you dive right into your elevator pitch. Don't try to share anything on your screen. Just have that conversation face to face and let it flow naturally. You want to highlight the value you provide and the needs that the agency might have through conversation. And again, you want to respect the meeting time as well. And by that, I mean, we've all been in, meetings where they run long. And in the virtual matchmaker, or let me back up, in the in-person matchmaker, you would have someone that rings a bell, to tell you your time's up, move on to the next meeting. Well, on the virtual one, I know there's going to be some guidance as well, but it's easy to get lost in a virtual meeting. You lose track of time. Just try to keep everything concise and, hit the key high points and try to respect that meeting time, because although you might not be meeting with someone right after the current one, the agency that you're meeting with probably is. Last thing you do want to try to do at some point in the meeting, perhaps at the end, is ask for that contact information so you can follow up afterwards, so you can send them that capability statement and try to keep the conversation going. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Larry, who's going to talk on how you can perfect your elevator pitch and really be effective in the meeting.
Thank you, Joey. And I also wanted to thank the Greater Cleveland Partnership Cozy team for this opportunity to speak with you all, and as we prepare for the Cleveland Matchmaker. I'll be talking on perfecting your elevator pitch. And the elevator pitch really derived from exactly that. You kind of envision yourself walking into an office building and you get on an elevator, and what do most people do when they get on the elevator? They're kind of looking up at the numbers, make sure they get off on the right floor. And I encourage you to turn to somebody, introduce yourself, mention your name, mention your company, and you got about 30 seconds to give them a pitch about your business. And that person may or may not be receptive, but once you've given your pitch and you get off on your floor, you might get a tap on the shoulder, because guess what? Everyone in that elevator just heard what you said. And you may get a tap on your shoulder with a person telling you that they were very interested in what you had to say. Here's my card. Let's keep in touch. I'd like to hear more. And that person right there could make all the difference in the world. But again, if you're like everyone else and never say anything while you're in that elevator, then you just had that missed opportunity. So you will definitely want to have anywhere from a 30-second to a 2-minute elevator pitch. You may want to have both, and I'm going to mention why a little bit later in the presentation. But when you're perfecting your elevator pitch, there are 4 primary pillars of a great elevator pitch, and that's what you want. You want a great pitch, something that really gets a person's attention that you're talking to. So clarity is very important. Adults only have an 8-second attention span, so make sure that your pitch is very clear and concise. Sometimes when we're talking about our business, we're wanting to tell our whole life story from when we even thought about having a business, or when we even thought about taking a product to market or something like that. But it's important to stay focused. It's important to really convey what it is that you want that person to know about your business. So be very clear, very concise about it. And practice your pitch, right? Whether it's in front of your team, in front of your mirror, in front of your dog or your cat. You want to get in as many practices as you possibly can, preferably in front of folks who can give you feedback. Not necessarily family members, because they're always going to give you, positive feedback. Oh, you did great. You're doing wonderful. So you really want someone who can be objective, again, like a team member or another business associate who doesn't necessarily work for the business, but practice makes perfect, as they say. You want to be simple. Of course, you want to use keywords that are important to the industry, so that the person that you're talking to knows what you're talking about, knows that you're familiar. But you don't want to get too technical. You don't want to be in the weeds, so to speak. because that person, more often than not, especially with this upcoming matchmaker, may be someone who's a little more high level. And some of the things, if you're getting real technical, may be something that may or may not interest them. So again, you want to use keywords of the industry to let them know that you do know what you're talking about, but you don't want to, have too much language in there that kind of deviates from that. And you want to be passionate about what you do. Most business owners, when they start a business, it's because they're passionate about something and they do it very well. So let that shine, let that come through, right? As they always say, enthusiasm is contagious, right? So even virtually or even over the telephone, you can still project that enthusiasm, project that excitement, and it's really going to get that person's attention. So don't hesitate to really just let that kind of flow through, shine through. It can actually be the difference between a closed door and another conversation. So just make sure that you're yourself, but again, let that excitement and that enthusiasm shine through. Next slide, please. So these are the 6 steps to a successful elevator speech, elevator pitch. And the first is a hook, right? I'll make an analogy of an email. The subject line in a lot of emails will be something that you might think is kind of off topic, even kind of borderline, eccentric or something, but it catches your interest, so you open up the email. If it's just a really basic subject line, you may or may not be captivated by it, but that's the concept of having a really kind of avant-garde subject line in an email. So something that's important to the company, something that they're familiar with, something that they really want to, emphasize about their business is something that you may utilize as a hook. And so you want to do something that grabs their attention, something that's unique, something that's compelling, so that they want to hear more. And you want to identify a problem, right? When you're interacting with a possible client, prospective client, you want to identify a problem that they have that again lets them know that you've done your homework, right? That you done some research on this company, you know what their pain points are, and you want to, provide a unique solution to what it is that this company has as a problem or a challenge. And so be unique in your solution. So you've identified a problem, then you want to offer a solution, but you want to be unique in your solution. Corporates here, there's pitches from companies all day, every day, right? So you've got to be able to do something to differentiate yourself from all the other companies that are out there making a similar pitch to these companies. So try to emphasize. First, you want to emphasize the company that you're talking to. Always make them the focus, make them the focal point. But by the same time, you want to make sure that you've got a unique value proposition for this company to solve the solution or solve the problem that they have that they're confronted with. Next slide, please. So another possibility for your elevator pitch is to mention your team. A lot of small businesses are one-man operations, so you may or may not have a team, so to speak. But if you do have a team, it's critical that you sort of mention them too, so that they know that there are a number of different individuals involved who actually have expertise in these different areas that is important to this business that you're pitching. So you just want to make sure that they're sold on your perceived capability. You build credibility by mentioning these other folks and their expertise as well. So try to work in the fact that you're going to have a whole team working on this solution to their problem. You want to try to be able to gain traction. How is your product or service engaging within its own market? And to be able to build that traction, to be able to mention what it is that you've been able to do to offer advances or offer advantages or different angles for what we call past performances or other clients that you work with, to establish yourself as a SME or a subject matter expert, an industry expert, is also going to go a long way. And then as you close with your elevator pitch, you want to ask for a business card, as Joey mentioned, or ask for a way to connect with them, and maybe via email, or even ask for another one-on-one meeting with them. I've always been of the impression that you never want to leave a meeting without asking for another meeting, right? So just kind of be cognizant of that too. How you close a meeting can really be kind of critical. You may have enjoyed the conversation so much and got into it so much that you get to the end of it and you forget to ask for a way to connect with them, and you walk away and you're feeling really good, but then you have a downer because you're like, oh man, I didn't even get their contact information. So just kind of make sure that you're able to do that as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so what I want to end on are tips to an effective elevator speech. You want to have a goal with your elevator speech, because again, you want to make it high level so that when you're talking to potential clients, you're focused on either your organization, you're focused, you can even have an elevator pitch for a new product or a new idea that you're looking to introduce and or execute. So don't try to close the deal. This isn't a sales pitch, right? This is an elevator pitch. It's more informational than a sale, right? And I've known people to talk their way in and out of a deal because they offer too much information or they're trying to get the sale. So just kind of relax, give them the information, but not too much information, because you want them wanting more information. You want them to hear more about your company. Also know your audience. Joey mentioned this earlier. You want to do your research so that this company knows that you have an interest in them. They're the focus, they're the focal point. So you want to certainly make sure that you do your research. You talk about things that are important to them. You talk about their problems, their challenges, and what solution you're going to offer to make sure that their problem is solved. Less is more. Again, there's a natural tendency for us. One of our favorite topics is ourselves, right, or our business. So you don't want to get into a stand-up, a monologue, where you really don't have an opportunity for your potential client, your prospective client, to get in a word edgewise. You want to certainly talk about your company, but you want some feedback to them, and you're able to utilize that feedback to, again, build a rapport, which is the next step. Find something in common, find some talking points that really resonates with that client or potential client. And so you want to just make sure that you're, again, not trying to tell your entire story of everything and anything about your business. You want to leave them with wanting more information. And finally, again, practice, practice, practice. You don't want to memorize your elevator pitch, but you certainly want to let it flow like a natural conversation. Matter of fact, you don't want to write something out and then try to memorize it. You want to have specific topics or themes, high level, but information that's important about your company that you want to convey to your prospective client, that you can just elaborate on. So Again, don't memorize it. Let it flow naturally like a conversation. And so with that, I think we're going to open it up with questions. If anyone has a question at all.
Well, Larry, I did just have a couple more things I wanted to close on. But
yeah, let me toss it back to Joey.
No problem. I just want to add on to what Larry said about practicing. Not everyone is a great networker or a great speaker, and so it can be nervous, especially in a new virtual environment, trying to meet with someone you've never met before. You can be a little nervous, but knowing those key points and those high points that you want to promote about yourself and your business, that gives you the framework to start the conversation. But like Larry said, you do not want to memorize it, because you want to sound like a human being. You don't want to sound like a robot that's just listing off facts about your business, because that gives the wrong impression. On the other end of it, and the reason we encourage you to practice what you're going to talk about is if you start stumbling over your own business and you can't clearly communicate what you do or who you are as a business, well, that sends the wrong impression as well. And when it comes time to do business, that agency is kind of be less likely to reach out to someone who can't even explain their own business. So being comfortable with what you want to do is key, and I'll recap that in a minute. So after the meeting, one of the things we've been stressing, try to get that contact information during the meeting. Try to find out too what their preferred method is. Some people love using email and will only use email. They won't even answer the phone. But other people, get so many emails, or they just like having that conversation, they prefer phone. So try to find out what the person you're meeting with, what their preferred contact method is. After a meeting, when you are trying to send that capability statement, number one, try to keep it in a PDF format so it can get past any security barriers and it's easy to open. But also, don't send mass emails. If you meet with 5 people, send 5 different personalized emails. And the reason is, and Larry, I'm sure you can attest to this too, if I receive a mass email, and unless it's something really related to what I'm doing, I'm gonna probably lower that on the priority list to get back to, because I have so much other things to do during the day. But if I receive a personalized email, then that's going to catch my eye, and I'm more likely to open it. And I'm not saying that the agency is going to respond to it, but there's a higher chance they're going to actually open it and remember, hey, that's the person I met with at the Cleveland Virtual Matchmaker. And that's a good way to try to keep the conversation going there as well. So some final thoughts I'd like to leave you with is, like I said, we've been kind of going back and forth on this theme. Be professional, but be confident and comfortable with what you're representing of yourself as well. So get familiar with the technology beforehand. Make it work for you, not against you. Perfect your pitch. Be comfortable, speaking on the virtual meetings. But also do your prep work before the matchmaker. Do the research for the agencies that you're meeting with, and do whatever housekeeping, so to speak, work that you need to do as well to have that professionalism the day of the meeting. And again, respect the meeting time as much as possible and try to focus on the value you provide and the need or pain points of the agency you're trying to solve. So without
Thanks, guys. I have some questions here for you.
Perfect.
The first question I have is, if I have limited time to prepare for a virtual meeting, what would you say is the number one thing that I should spend my time prepping for?
Yeah. So Larry, and you can chime in here in a bit. I would say, the first thing you want to prioritize, if you have a short amount of time, is really getting to understand who you're meeting with, because you don't want to walk into a meeting and say, hey, happy to meet you, I have no clue who you are, because again, that sends the wrong message. So trying to be familiar with who you're meeting with and what they're trying to buy and what pain points they have, so you can really tailor that conversation.
I would concur. That's exactly what I was going to mention as well, Joey, is to be able to do that research, right? You may have an opportunity to meet with several businesses at this business matchmaker. So spend that time learning what you can about each of the businesses that you're going to meet with, so that you can, again, have an engaging conversation with them and let them know that, hey, I've done my research, I know about your company, I know about what your challenges are.
Thanks. Okay, great. I have another question here. Do you think that virtual meetings are a trend that will continue even after the coronavirus pandemic is over?
That's a good question, and I think you will see persistent meetings when it's appropriate. I'm the type of person, I really prefer meeting face to face, and in this situation, where we're in now with COVID and all these other health concerns, that's not always possible. And I think having the virtual matchmaker is a great alternative, so that you can still have those connections, still have the opportunities. And I think you will see a lot of webinars, training events, and other virtual events happening in the future. I don't think that's going to necessarily go away, but I believe some aspects of doing business, especially networking, a lot of that to some extent will return to what we were used to before.
I agree 100%.
Okay, good. I have another question here. Have you had a really good virtual meeting with someone who impressed you? And if so, what did they do to stand out in that virtual meeting?
Yeah. So, I'd say in recent memory, one of the most memorable meetings I had was with a client who really, when we came in, they had a checklist of everything they wanted to talk about. And as a counselor, we have our own checklist and issues we want to go over with them, but they already knew what they wanted to do, and we were able to really hit those key points that were more effective to help them, because it wasn't going back and forth and really trying to okay, have you done this, have you done, et cetera, et cetera. It was, okay, this is everything I've done, it's not working, how can we move forward? So really taking that time to prepare and practice, so to speak, before the meeting, that's what I would recommend.
I also would piggyback on that. That would be the number one thing that impressed me the most. But quite often in meeting with clients, sometimes they seem to have like real low energy. I don't know if they, didn't get their cup of coffee that morning or what the problem may be. But if they have some energy, enthusiasm, they're really into it. And also if they're taking notes, right? The fact that, because when we meet with clients, typically we're going to do a big data dump, right? And so it's a lot of information. Some folks will just be sitting there, very casual. So taking notes, let them know that you're paying attention.
Great. Okay. I just wanted to let you know that Anne, who's running the event, Anne Siegel, as we mentioned at the beginning, wanted me to let you know that there will be a countdown clock in every appointment showing your time limit and how much time you have left. So you won't have to be guessing about that. And also that an attendee email with the link to attend the meeting will be sent out this week. So keep an eye out for that. And I just wanted to thank you, Larry and Joseph, for sharing so much great information and insight with us. And thanks to all of you for participating in today's webinar. We learned a lot of information today that will help you find success meeting with other businesses during the Cleveland B2B Matchmaker event next week. If you haven't registered for the event yet, please do so by going to www.clevelandb2, spelled out T-O, bmatchmaker.com to do so. This concludes today's session. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, have a great day. Bye.